Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this Thursday afternoon to the Deep Focus podcast. On today's episode, Murad and I will be talking about some of the underappreciated directors in Hollywood and our thoughts, Murad's thoughts on this week's WrestleMania. But first,
Five God on the beat. Welcome back, listeners. As always, I'm Murad, and joining me is the colorful Varun. Only reason I say that is because I've never seen him wear this shade of salmon pink, and I think it's adorable on you. So I like it.
I
It
don't know
complements your
how,
cheeks.
I
It's
don't
good.
know, I don't know why your voice got that high. It got a little awkward. I always appreciate the compliment, but man, you got too excited there. And I know you're lonely. I know you're lonely. I, I, I know you're still looking for your wife out there.
I choked on an apple.
You're choking on an apple. At least that's what he calls it.
It's somewhere. It's somewhere in there. That giggity though. I like it.
That's what she said. All right. Um, Man, you watched WrestleMania this week, didn't you?
Honestly, it's all I did. It
What
was just.
What did you
It's
think?
like there was
It
like.
doesn't matter what you think. We're not here to talk about WrestleMania. We're here to talk. I'm just kidding. I just want to throw it out there.
Shit. Oh,
Oh man,
wow.
I just want to throw it in there. Yeah,
No, it's good though. That was good. That was good. I'll give you that one.
WrestleMania was back this week. I didn't watch it. I haven't watched WrestleMania and since Taker lost.
No, yeah.
I've
The sad
that's
year for the dead man.
yeah, yeah. So I watch
The one,
documentaries on wrestling and things like that, but I haven't
yeah.
watched wrestling in a while.
The one reason I wanted to bring it up because this was the first big event. You know what? The Super Bowl was, but this is the first time in a year that fans were back at the Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida. And I was nervous because I thought maybe they were operating at like 15-25% capacity. No, they were like it they always say yeah, they shut down a bunch of areas, but anytime they cut to the crowd, I would always see maybe 10-15 people not wearing masks. And that's only in the one camera shot. Imagine how many people there were not wearing masks. And then look at the amount of people in a mosh pit together. And so I don't know. It made me feel kind of weird, kind of unsafe, but it was really nice to see fans there. And WrestleMania is always. This one was pretty good, Vern. I know you don't. You said you're not a big wrestling guy after the Undertaker loss. I get it, but it was not bad, man. The action was great, but we're not here to talk about that. We're
Well,
here to talk about movies.
well, actually, the second time out with the movies for a second, I did watch some of Bad Bunny's highlights from WrestleMania. I thought that was pretty dope. It seemed like he was a long lost Hardy Boy. I
Hmm.
felt like he felt that mode. But the first for the fans out there, the first full capacity sporting event or event that we've had was actually baseball related. So the
Oh,
Texas Rangers hosted the Blue Jays for their home opener, and they were at full capacity. Yeah, because down in Texas, how they lifted the mask ban, like didn't no more, it's no longer
right.
mandatory.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were the first. They were the first team. That's the first sporting event to have full capacity. For for a fun fact for you people who are curious out there.
Yeah, that would make me feel so nervous. Like even just watching it on TV, I'm like, I'm gonna get it just by watching this event. So that would always freak me out. But you know what, Texas, fix if you want to fix it. Don't if you don't. I'm not there. I don't really, you know, like I'm here in my safe bubble in my house, not really leaving. Texas, y'all do what you want to do. I'm not gonna tell you how to do your thing, but just do better, I
So
guess.
while you've been watching wrestling, I've been watching content, and hope to bring information to the show. Thank you for bringing no value to this week's episode. I appreciate that.
Always.
But not to be fair, you are ahead of me on the best picture nominees for the year and what to watch. So I'll give you that one prop as the only one you'll get for next year. So hold on to dear life. But I have been watching a few things so far, and the one thing that stuck out so far to me was Trials of Chicago 7. And the first thought I have overall, some of the movies I watched was this is not a good best picture year. So I have been very underwhelmed on the movies that come out.
Mhm.
What I actually think this year would be, this is a massive acting year because I just think there's been so many phenomenal performances in these movies, but I just felt like some of the directions that was taking in these movies. I'm not gonna go into details until our Oscar week, but I don't know. I just feel off so far. So I know you had a look, but that these movies have been throwing me off lately. I've been disappointed so far.
Mhm.
But again, the week before the Oscars, we'll dedicate our time to that, breaking down each of the Best Picture movies, kind of go from there. But besides that, I'll be watching my usual weekly shows right now. So right now, on a weekly basis, I mentioned the last episode, I'm watching The Falcon, The Winter Soldier. I am watching Invincible, which is another very violent and graphic animated cartoon on Amazon Prime, which it's very good. I'm not gonna say it's great, but it's been very entertaining and really fun to watch. The biggest shock to me that I've been watching that's very interesting was the Mighty Ducks Game Changer TV series on Disney Plus. It is very well done. I am surprised how well done it is. And you have to go into it expecting like a Mighty Duck type of theme, that aura, that like you need to expect that. It's not like it's gritty type of TV series and like hardcore sports series. It's another underdog story. It's really well done. I believe it's 3 or 4 episodes in. If you enjoyed the original My Ducks movie at all, I highly recommend it. It's great. Like it's well watched. The number one show of the week for me that I discovered by accident on Crave TV that stuck out for the last 2 weeks is the most expensivest. It is
Oh,
so fun to watch.
it's so
It's
good.
ridiculous, so out of its mind. It's a show about was hosted by Two Chains. There's a few seasons available on Crave TV, at least in Canada. I don't know where else it's available right now. At this point, I would guess, but it's fantastic if you have a chance to watch it. Each episode is a theme, and the theme is really he's finding the most expensive, most bougiest, most extravagant stuff out there available. So if there's a bike, he's gonna find the most expensive bike. And like a motorcycle helmet, he's gonna find the most expensive helmet, the most
Mhm.
expensive like dog hotel. So it's crazy. And the best thing about that was with Two Chains, he gets his like look in his face like, wow, it's gonna cost me that much money. And then like you hear see his brain like click, like, oh shit, I could afford this.
Yeah,
Then,
yeah.
but then after he realized he could afford this and realized who he is, he's like, but I'm gonna get this for free though, right? And like it's amazing. I love it.
No, I love it, man.
Watch
It's
it.
I started watching that when it was a short video series that GQ did on their YouTube page. And I that's when I started watching it. And the first one I watched was I think he was looking at a bulletproof suit. And he's like, "Oh man, this is gonna be cool when I head down to the hood." And I'm thinking, bro, what's going on? And since then, I was obsessed with it. He had like the most expensive burger. I think it was like $1,000 per burger with like gold flakes. And he's like, "Why do I need gold flakes? I
He had a
already
gold
got it on
flake.
my wrist." Yeah.
He had a gold flake donut. He had a
Oh
gold
really?
yeah.
Oh
Um,
man, it's so good. And they picked the right guy because Two Chainz is hilarious in it.
yeah, man. All right, guys, we'll take a quick break. Then we'll come back and talk about the unappreciated directors of Hollywood. Welcome back, everyone. Like I mentioned in the last couple episodes, today's episode, I want to talk about the most underappreciated director, and in my opinion, in Hollywood. And I want to bring this up because this man has done a lot of amazing work. And in my opinion, if you run a studio and you want to make money on your movie, you hire this man because I do believe he's the most profitable man in Hollywood. And I think he's the most profitable man in Hollywood of all time that doesn't involve being in front of a screen. And that's my man, James Wan. James Wan has, you see, we recognize his name, you see his name, but not a lot of people could piece more than a few movies that he's done,
Mhm.
which is frustrating to me. And I apologize, I'm about to go on a rant here, but it's I have never been as frustrated when it comes to a respect towards a director like this since Richard Donner. And do you know, can you, a topic before about looking, Murad, can you think of two projects by Richard Donner?
I cannot know.
No, see that, so that's frustrating, right? And it honestly kind of pisses me off because Richard Donner did some, not just made some great movies, he did some iconic films that forever cemented in our brains in Hollywood. And like it's there, like he brought us to Goonies, he brought us the entire Lethal Weapon catalog, he brought us the original Superman movies,
Hmm.
right? He brought us Omen. He brought us, like, he's done so many different things. And like my personal favorite was Assassins with Sylvester Stallone, right?
Hmm.
Like he does some amazing work, but we don't talk about him for some reason. We don't. We talk about the Goonies. We talk about
Hmm.
Lethal Weapon. We talk about Omen as one of the great first horror movies. But Richard Donner doesn't get the respect he deserves. And today, I think James Wan is our current time Richard Donner. James Wan has done everything. And when I told you I want to do a podcast about him, you gave me like really? Why James Wan? Then like
I
10
did.
minutes later, it's like you're like, holy shit, dude, this guy has a massive catalog. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, no shit. Right? Like he's done like he's more than just a slasher guy when he brought us the Saw series. Right? Like the whole like blood porn of the horror time, like when we had when it comes to like the Saw 1, 2, 3, 4, the gory
Hmm.
stuff. Like we had that quick run of like it was Hostel, there was The Hills of Eyes. We had the quick run of horror movies that was all blood and guts and cutting Achilles and things like that. But then he flipped the script on everybody by bringing out Insidious, right? Like right after that, he did Insidious was, I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, had a $2 million budget and he
Hmm.
blew over the box office.
Hmm.
And he brought us to Conjuring. And he's done Fast and Furious. Like he did this, like obviously I'm talking about Fast and Furious. I have to find a way to bring Fast
At
and
least
Furious
once per episode.
at least once per episode. I
Yeah.
have to. You bring game up, you bring up Game of Thrones. I gotta bring up the Fast series.
It was shite, but whatever.
Aquaman.
What? Yeah.
Aquaman. Like he City Chapter. Like I can't stop thinking. Like and what I'm still questioning is why. Why aren't we talking about James Wan in the same breath as some of these other directors? He's no like Tarantino. He's no Scorsese. I am not saying get this guy an Oscar
Mm-hmm.
or a Golden Globe, even though I thought he should have got one for The Conjuring.
Hmm.
I think Conjuring is one of the best horror movies, like the most current horror movies out there, like Spook Scare. Like I know some other movies out there like Witches and things like that have done phenomenal things. Midnight Summer, all that sort of stuff. But like when it comes to like mainstream horror movies, for the
Hmm.
longest time it fell off and just brought this back. He's no longer relying on like a attractive woman in the shower being murdered or slashed up or running away. He makes these amazing movies. And why do you think that is? Why do you think we don't give him the respect he deserves?
Might be a controversial take, and I understand that. I think mainly because as awesome as the horror genre is, it's it's not. I don't want to say it's niche, but not everyone can handle a horror movie, right? Like, and the people that do really like certain styles of horror movies. I'll be honest, I wasn't a big horror movie guy for a while, until I saw and I saw this recently, but by recently I mean like 7 years ago. Was the original Halloween series with Michael Myers. I thought, whoa, this is really cool. Uh, and after that, I'm not a big fan of slasher films, gory films. I've never seen Saw because I think it's entirely too scary, but B, I also think it's too egregious, you know. And horror movies to me, like you said, the Midsommars, the Lighthouse, The Witch, like the Robert Eggers movies and the Ari Aster, like the thriller horror, not thriller, but like mind bending horror films. I like those. I like the ones that flip the horror script on its head. Like Midsummer was shot almost entirely in the daytime, but it was still terrifying, right? Because the scare is not because it's dark and you can't see what's like around the corner. It's it's the unraveling of the human mind. And I've said this before, and I think you have those type of horror movie fans like myself, and then we have the people who like slasher, like the gore, like you like the Saw, the and all that. So, and the reason why I think he's underappreciated is because his big mainstream movies that I would say 90% of the people can see would be Fast and Furious 7 or Furious 7, and Aquaman, if anything, right? Like Aquaman had a big draw because it was a superhero movie and it was DC. Furious 7 because of the fandom behind Fast and Furious, right? People were going to see it regardless. They didn't know, or they didn't really care who was directing it. Whereas with horror films, I know a lot of people that have seen The Conjuring, have seen Insidious, have seen The Nun, and they've loved it. But that's only a handful of the people I know, and I think that's telling of what the general population would also see. That's what I think. What do you think?
Men lie, women lie, numbers don't, right? Like these numbers
Mhm.
have shown that they've raked in. Like the amount of money these
Yeah.
movies have raked in shows you're actually completely wrong on this. Like the general public wants to be thrilled. People go to the movie theaters, not they want to be jump scared. They want to watch the haunted houses. So I respect the fact that you are not into that. That's totally fine because it isn't for everyone.
Mhm.
But the general public prefers the opposite. The general public prefers the Insidious, prefers the Saw movies, prefer the Conjuring. There's a reason why there's a whole Conjuring universe out there,
Mhm.
like with the Nun and everything else. So he's taking whatever you give him, with
Mhm.
whatever money you give him, and he's blowing it away,
Mhm.
and he's making that money. So it can't be that. It can't be the general public not being into what he's talking about because he's making these companies money. So unless
Mhm.
I'm misunderstanding what you're trying to say, I don't think that has to do with anything. Like that's your preference, that's for sure. But
Mhm.
that's not what the general public is saying. The general public is saying, yeah, I love James Wan's movie,
Mhm.
but they're not going into the Conjuring saying, oh man, like especially the Conjuring 2 or in CDS 2 is like, oh man, James Wan killed it again. They're
Mhm.
not. They're saying, oh snap, where here comes Conjuring 2. No one's talking about, like we're talking about Tarantino's, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was like, yeah, I can't wait for a new Tarantino movie.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
No one's calling it, oh, I can't wait for the next James Wan movie.
Mhm.
Right. So that's where like I am confused about because he's making the money.
Mhm.
People are going out of the way to watch their movie. It's
Mhm.
not like his movie's having a second life and people watching it later on the streaming service, like some movies do. They don't do well in the box office and get the second life and watch it later. But they're getting life from the get-go. And why isn't James Wan getting that?
So when I said, of course, like the general public doesn't like it, I'm not saying that like it's horror movies are more niche than other movies, right? Like, because everyone can go sit in and watch a drama. You may not like it, but it's palatable. You know, like you can watch and sit through a drama. Whereas some people really don't like being scared. Horror movies have a huge following. Absolutely, the numbers are there because the like you said, the public does like being scared, but that's not all of the public. Like you can have kids watch a superhero movie or like a drama movie. They're not going to get it, but they're not going to stand away from it. That's what I mean. I also think, and like you said, he's not been getting awards, or no one's saying, "Oh, I can't wait for the new James Wan film," because there is no best horror movie category of any kind.
I'm not talking about the award. I know I made that clear in the beginning. I'm not talking about get this man an award.
No, I know.
But this guy's making 200. This guy's been given the script and $20 million, and he's been making
Mhm.
400 million, 3 to 400 million on a consistent basis.
Mhm.
I'm
But
not. Yeah,
right, but he may not be getting awards. That's fine. You don't. If he gets an award, great. If he doesn't, it's great. But I think the other directors that we talk about, I can't wait for the new Tarantino film. I can't wait for the new Scorsese film. they have a directing language that's been recognized. I can't wait for the new Wes Anderson film. When you see it, you know that's a Wes Anderson piece, Tarantino, what have you, right? But because the awards are recognizing it, it's more in the eyes of the people to think, oh, okay, this is a Tarantino film, and this is that film, right? The awards, like we said, don't matter, but they kind of do because that helps. The awards help people figure out, okay, what sort of avenue does this fit in, right? Best comedy, best drama, best musical, whatever. There's no best horror, so no one's really going to be like, okay, this is the director. There's no best horror director. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
think that's where I think they lose a few points.
but calling something niche is making it something very specific. I promise you, and I could bet all my money on it. There's more horror movies fan out there than there are Tarantino fans. There's more horror movie fans out there than there's Scorsese fans, and there's
Mhm,
more horror movies out there, especially Wes Anderson movies. Like
mhm. Oh, for sure.
I have
He's so
no,
niche, and I get that.
and so if you say niche, you have like that's niche is not the right word we're looking for here.
Okay.
It's not niche, right? And there's no best comedy unless you talk about Golden Globes or Emmys, right? This is why animated has their own movies. Like horror movies being excluded from best pictures as a whole different story. I just think they're getting consistently robbed and not mentioned every single year because it's a horror movie and they don't get the respect they deserve. And
Mhm,
I get that part. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the horror movie genre isn't getting the respect it deserves. Why isn't it getting the respect from Hollywood then? Why isn't it giving more projects and green lights? Like, hey, take us over. Like he
mhm,
was supposed to direct a Aquaman spin-off, Trenches, but that got scrapped by Warner
mhm,
Brothers.
mhm,
But they're not like, hey, like they're not trusting him with this. Like, what? Like, why isn't a movie company or a movie head's like, hey, here's $30 million, make something for us? Why isn't he getting that respect from that side? Because from the fan side, it's not a niche thing because niche has to be very specific,
fair enough.
right? Wes Anderson's niche,
Oh, for sure. 100%.
right? I can't say that about horror movies because horror movies been it will has been and it will be around for the rest of our times.
Mhm,
People like being scared.
mhm,
Poopy, my wife, her and her friend used to get together all the time when they hung out. All they did was watch horror movies.
mhm,
Like that's it. Like that's all they done. Like it's a massive amount of people out there. My good friend Charlotte at Horror Brown blog, all they do is talk about horror movies and like the horror genre because it's not getting the respect they deserve. And
mhm.
I just think I don't know, man. James Wan doesn't get the respect he deserves. I think Hollywood itself needs to wake up and give this guy a blank check and say, hey man, make us movie magic.
Mhm.
Because he is the most profitable person in Hollywood. And you can't no one can argue that. Like when it comes to behind the camera, James Cameron, but James Cameron movies are big budget movies.
Mhm.
He makes record breaking money, like there's no doubt about it with
But he's
Titanic,
also spending record breaking. No, I get it. Like
right?
I've never looked at that idea of it. But sure, yeah, no, I 100% agree. Based off of his movies, there's a lot of them that I didn't know he directed. Right, a lot of them. I didn't know he did Saw. I didn't know he did Conjuring. But also because I've never seen those movies, I didn't pay attention because that's not the type of movies that interest me, and that's okay. But like, there are a lot of horror movie fans. I used to work at a movie store, and there used to be a lot of people who were obsessed with horror. Like they they loved every single horror movie that came out, and there's a whole streaming service for specifically horror
Shudder.
movies, right?
Yeah.
Shutter, absolutely. So the market's there. I'm not. I knew him as soon as you mentioned James Wan. I was thinking Fast and Furious, and he only directed one of them, right? But I'm not sure what that says about me, but I might go out on a limb here, and this might be wrong, but if you say James Wan to a few people, they're going to think of Fast and Furious. They probably won't think of The Conjuring unless they're a huge horror movie buff, right? Or they like they really really like horror movies, because it's not in, like, you're not gonna see like the actors in horror movies go out to like Ellen and say, "Oh yeah, I'm part of like this. I'm part of the new Conjuring film." I also don't see a lot of horror movie actors be taken seriously, which they should. And I also don't see James Wan doing press junkets, right? I haven't seen him do any press runs. And the movies of his that are on these press junkets and are on Ellen would be like when um, Aquaman was coming out and they had the cast go on talk shows, right? When they had Vin Diesel in the cast of Fast Seven, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm in the new Fast and Furious film. This is who was directed by." There's advertising for it, right? Yes, there's trailers for The Conjuring. Yes, there's trailers for Insidious, but I don't see any of the actors going on Ellen or whichever show and being like, "Oh yeah, I'm part of this new movie," right? But I saw Jason Momoa be interviewed for Aquaman. I saw Jason Momoa be interviewed for Aquaman too, whichever, right? And so that's what I think.
Well, you can't say these horror movies don't get these big name actors because they do. Like Patrick Wilson's been on all of them, right? Ethan Hawke's been in horror movies now. I am blanking on one person's name for the life of me. I can't. I'm gonna give up. But like they're getting they're they're getting big stars. Like horror movies are doing that now. So we
Right,
can't,
absolutely.
right? So that's no longer an issue anymore because you, horror slasher films back in the days do anyone in there,
Right.
right? They got like a B series actor, sometimes lower, and it's like, hey, it's a slasher film. Go look good for a few scenes and get chopped off.
Hmm.
That was the case before. It's not the case anymore. The quality of horror movies is better than it ever
Right, absolutely.
is better than it ever was. But I don't think you're wrong though when not the actors but the people behind the movie, behind the camera, are not getting the respect it deserves.
Hmm.
And I think it's a goddamn shame that's happening
Hmm.
because as the movie head, she could see his numbers like, hey, here's some money, go make me a profit, and he could do it every single time.
Hmm.
I don't know, man. That's it hurts to see that because he's clearly very talented.
Hmm.
He has quite the imagination, and I feel like James Wan could do some amazing, great things with his work, but I feel like we're being withheld from it,
Hmm.
and it sucks.
I get it. No,
That's
I
yeah, that's my rant. Like it just I just turned to a rant more than like a back and forth podcast, but
right.
it's just frustrating, man. And it needs something needs to change.
Hmm.
You know, Hollywood to wake up and see what's going on with James Wan. I'm not saying James Wan is the only underappreciated director out
Right.
there. Just like he for the movies like I've been a fan of and watching and just following his career and talking about like we're talking about Leak the Weapon last week during our fun Q&A podcast. I watched Lethal Weapon again afterwards and like, oh yeah, Richard Donner. He
Hmm.
What else has he done? And leading to James Wan, I'm like, it's crazy how the two parallels exist. And I feel like 20 years from now, when we're done with the James Wan movie era, how will we remember him?
Hmm.
How like I'll remember him as I mentioned multiple times today, one of the most popular men in Hollywood. Some people may recognize him as the one guy who did the one Fast and Furious movie. Some people may remember as the guy who did the horror movies.
Hmm.
But I just hope to remember his work, respect his work,
Hmm.
and I hope that he makes some more projects because the man is amazing.
Well said.
That's all I have to say, man. What are your
No,
last thoughts?
my last thought is I love the passion that comes from that because it's a very real feeling of when
Yeah.
you are so frustrated that someone's not getting their proper dues.
Hmm.
And horror movies have been getting bigger name actors. Fantastic. And they've been getting better and better to a point where I think they're almost a little too scary, but that's a different topic. But like yeah, I hope that one day horror is taken seriously because it is a very precise way to tell a story, right? It's we're moving away from the slasher films of the 80s. A lot of these movies have a lot of depth to them, right? I'm not familiar with his work, but I can talk about what I'm familiar with, which is works like The Lighthouse, works like The Witch, um, Hereditary, and to me, the reason why I know those is because I know the studio A24 to be one of, in my opinion, one of the best indie studios out there. And all of these movies that they're bringing out is fantastic. And horror movies, because of those movies, I realized horror is a really, really good genre if you play it right, right?
Mhm.
And I have no doubt that James Wan's been playing it right because, of course, Saw, huge film, The Conjuring, and I've seen when I was working at the movie store, HMV. I see so many people buy his movies, and they did make a lot of money. Absolutely, I sold at least 10 copies of The Conjuring in a week, right?
Mhm.
I think it is about time that they start recognizing it as a proper form of storytelling, but I think it's also tainted because there's a lot of really, really bad horror movies that come out every like 2 months. You'll just see some really obscure thing and it'll be on Amazon Prime Video, but it's still categorized under the horror movie subgenre, right? And there's so many different subgenres where the really, really bad horror movies taint the really, really good horror movies like James Wan stuff. Absolutely. And so yeah, I agree with you. I hope James Wan when we do look. I know, and of course, I'll sit down and I'll watch whatever I can before like I get too spooked. Because I'm not a big jump scare guy, right? I like the really slow burn. Let's watch the mind unravel. But I'll sit down and I've seen his directing language translate from one movie to another, right? I've seen his work on like Fast and Furious 7, how that translated to like his sort of coloring, his way of storytelling, his camera work transition over to Aquaman. Even if you look at the posters of all of his movies, they're dark, they're ominous. You don't really see the main character much. But yeah, I hope you're right. I hope he gets his dues.
So let's someday, folks, respect horror movies, respect James Wan, watch his stuff. With that, I think I'm all burnt out from my little spiel today. Until next week, guys, Murad, end us off here.
Let's respect each other. Let's respect James Wan. Let's be kind to one another. Love each other. Peace.
Peace.